Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Liz from the Paranormal Investigation or Exploration Club. I'm the vice president, and we are going to be talking about paranormal documentaries with Brandon today. Hi, Brandon. Thank you for coming.
Hey, thanks for having me on. This is great.
So tell us about yourself.
Well, I got involved in the field at a young age. In 1995, I lost a brother to cancer. And in 2004, I lost another brother to suicide. So that kind of sent me on my journey into the paranormal, if you will. And I never really had a personal experience, never really had a ghostly experience per se. But having to grow up at a young age and learn about death and the possibility of life after death led me to found the American Paranormal Research Association in 2006 to solely investigate historical locations from a scientific perspective. I've been very lucky to work with world-renowned scientists, medical doctors, and engineers. I work closely with Dr. Harry Clore. He's the only person in history to receive 2 PhDs simultaneously, and someone that's really helped with my research, and that's something I've been doing now for, 17 years. So it's been quite the ride.
Wow. Okay. Introduce yourself.
Oh, hi. I'm Paul Vetrano. I'm just a member of the club.
Nice to meet you guys.
Yeah. Okay. So what was my question? All of my questions just went out of my head. I'm really sorry.
Well, you said you try and do stuff from a scientific standpoint. So, can you explain what you mean by that? How do you do that?
Well, we follow a very strict scientific protocol. A lot of times with the various shows and a lot of research you see out there, you see a lot of devices that are specifically made for paranormal research that give a lot of false positives, something that we refer to as garage tech. So what we do is we look at environmental data and we look at data that can actually be analyzed by a third party from a technical industry, whatever that device may be, and we take that data and try and eliminate all the natural explanations first and try to eliminate all the natural causes before we start to look at and jump to the conclusion of it being paranormal. So it's all about following scientific principle and really using devices that are made for other industries and adapting that into our space and taking that data and actually opening it up to scientific scrutiny. So that's very important.
That's awesome. Do you have any questions?
I mean, I wasn't able to get up to this point.
Oh.
But so you do documentary filmmaking, right?
Absolutely.
Do you do the filming for the Ghost Hunters show?
On Ghost Hunters, I didn't film myself. I actually was a filmmaker prior to Ghost Hunters, and I also was a producer for ABC and CBS and Fox Television on the news side for a long time. And what made me want to start making documentaries and paranormal documentaries was I thought it was a very great medium to get the data and the information out there without it being too analytical, right? So instead of putting out graphs and charts and all these things that a lot of people really wouldn't follow, I thought it was a better way to tell the story and to present the data and the information in a not only creative way, but a compelling way. So that's really what got me started. And I think it was 2009, I started doing a documentary series called Haunted Discoveries. That's really what kind of vaulted me into what I later did with Science Channel and the Unexplained Files, and what I did with Ghost Hunters on A&E. Also Ghost Adventures. I was on Ghost Adventures a couple times as well. But I thought it was the easiest way and the best medium to present data and information in a way that it was consumable to a majority of the people in the paranormal.
What?
So what was your best experience from working with the Ghost Hunters on that television show?
Oh, I'd probably have to say in season 2, we went to a place called Fort Stanton, New Mexico, which is a amazing location from a historical standpoint. You not only have the Lincoln County Wars, which was Billy the Kid. Have you ever seen the movie Young Guns? That's exactly what that's about. So not only did you have the Lincoln County Wars in this location, you had a prisoner of war camp from World War II. You had the first federal tuberculosis hospital in the country. And all of this on one property. This place is so big and so in the middle of nowhere, it has its own zip code, which is very interesting. But what was so great about that investigation was we implemented a very sensitive scientific piece of equipment, a camera called the EMCCD camera, a photon camera. And the idea of this camera is typically used by NASA and scientists to observe single photon events. And photon events are light events that carry electromagnetic radiation. So I went to my consultants that I work with on the scientific side, and I asked them, if what we think are ghosts are real and are taking place, how would I be able to document that from a scientific perspective? And they told me they thought it could be photon events. So we had this amazing camera. We took it into the Federal Tuberculosis Hospital, where very credible eyewitnesses over a span of years have seen apparitions and entities in this location. And we actually captured an amazing image of someone peeking out of one of the doorways, which was identical to what these eyewitnesses have been seeing for a long time. But what's so interesting about it and what's so exciting about it is the fact that these are photon events taking place in a said haunted location. And now we have measurable data, we have a theory, and we have something that can be further measured in different locations throughout the country or throughout the world, where we might have an insight into the possible mechanics of what we believe to be manifestation of ghosts. So that was actually very, very interesting.
What was your favorite piece of equipment to be using?
I'd probably have to say the EMCCD camera, as well as a data logger, EDI Plus, which again, like we talked about earlier, environmental data is huge when it comes to investigating and observing a location, because we have to know what's natural and what's not natural before we start to talk about things that are paranormal, right? So when you have the EDI Plus, I always call it the Swiss Army knife of the paranormal. You have temperature, humidity, pressure, EMF, vibration, all into one device that records to an SD card and gives you data that you can not only timestamp, but really observe between multiple days and locations. So I'd have to say those two pieces of equipment work hand in hand and actually give the most credible data from a standpoint where you can actually go to a professional from a third party and say, here's what we found. Do you have an explanation for it? That's really what you want to build on.
Exactly, yeah. I like using the EDI for the same reason. It's not like it's got actual sensors that are not designed specifically to be used to like speak with ghosts.
Exactly. And a lot of those devices out there, like K2 meters, Mel meters, they're not very well shielded. Like you said, they're used to communicate with ghosts, and they're easily set off by radio frequencies, cell phone frequencies, walkie-talkies. And with the EDI Plus, that was one of the main reasons we used it on Ghost Hunters. We tested it prior to actually taking it out into the field on the show. Is it's not set off by cell phones. I mean, it can be if you literally lay it on top of a cell phone. And same with a radio and walkie-talkie. So it was the most shielded, like you said, and the best. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a question from one of our audience members. So it says, hi Brandon, was there a single event in your life that got you interested in paranormal research?
Yeah, I'd have to say the death of my brothers. Like, again, I never really had a paranormal experience per se. It was more about learning about death and the possibility of life after death at a young age. And before I actually ever stepped foot in the field, I just read as much as I could about paranormal research, from a scientific perspective to a psychic perspective, metaphysical, all of it. I wanted to really find out what I was trying to interact with or what I was getting myself into prior to doing it. And I really latched onto the scientific perspective. And I always, and I'm still a firm believer in the, theory that energy is neither created nor destroyed. And our bodies are completely made up of energy. Or we have neurons firing off in our brain right now. So does that energy retain consciousness when we die, and where does it go? And that's really the big question I have.
Exactly.
You said that you did a lot of prior research and stuff, and so I guess my question is, what research or what's influenced you the most that you found really fascinating of someone else's piece of work that isn't your own?
I probably have to say Nikola Tesla, Thomas Edison, these brilliant inventors and scientists. I mean, we can go back to Isaac Newton. A lot of these people were firm believers in not only spirituality, but a life after death. I mean, it wasn't a question for them. It was something that was clear and present, and something that they tried to communicate with. Thomas Edison tried to make multiple devices to try and communicate with the dead. Nikola Tesla as well. Isaac Newton was a firm believer. He even went as far as to try and decode the Bible mathematically, which is interesting. But I'd have to say, Nikola Tesla, Thomas Edison, those guys really going and reading about their belief in the possibility of a life after death and energy associated with that was something that really jumped out at me and something that really fuels my fire when it comes to paranormal research, for sure.
Mm.
What do you think of like the Tesla coil, Jacobson ladder, and stuff like that being used for investigating?
Yeah, we've used it. Actually, we actually used one in Waverly Hills, which was an interesting experiment in a location that's not only widely known to be very active.
Talking about the same stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but we
Yeah.
did it, and it generated activity. That activity wasn't something that was measurable data per se, but there were rocks thrown out of rooms that we had no explanation for, things like that. So it definitely amps up the environments of a location.
Mhm.
So again, like when you're using a device like that, it's obviously going to contaminate all of your readings because you're pumping energy in the air, but it's the results around it, right? What kind of manifests outside of it. Again, it all comes down to more personal experience in those situations, but it's definitely an interesting experiment and something I think that should be used more in research and probably in a more controlled way. Maybe use it periodically throughout a span of a couple of days, same time every day. Measure all the data, measure all the environmental data, and turn it on for 5 minutes, and then measure again. So I think that's something that could be utilized a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
That's super cool.
Did we talk about like his favorite investigation?
Oh no, that's what I was gonna ask. Because you've done so many shows, so many. What?
I said we might have already talked.
I don't know if we have. Yeah, since you've done so many shows and been to so many different places, what's your favorite place that you guys got to go to?
Ooh, that's tough. With ghost hunters, it's always great because we go to a location for 5 days, right? And the way it's edited down, it looks like we're there for 1 or 2 nights, but we're really there for a significant period of time, and we're there all day, all night. So I'd have to say, prior to ghost hunters, though, with my organization APRA, we have observed buildings for years, and that's something that we really take seriously. Not just going there for a weekend or coming back a month later. It's about a long observation of a location that's said to be haunted. We've done locations. Sometimes we've investigated for over 10 years in locations, some that are still ongoing.
My goodness.
2 jump out to me, and 2 that I think have the most credible data and the longest running investigation we've done would one be the RMS Queen Mary in Long Beach, California, and also another place called the McConaughey Estate in San Lorenzo, California, which are both not only extremely active, but have really provided a lot of data for us, a lot of stuff that we cannot explain by a third party. Opening that up to that scientific scrutiny and to an expert scrutiny, we have a lot of data that we can't explain to this day. So I think those 2 locations really stick out to me and are 2 locations that we continue to observe to this day.
Yeah. We have another question from our audience member. Have you ever been to a super haunted location that didn't seem haunted, and why do you think that happens? It is active sometimes and not others.
Oh yeah, no, there's some places I've been that are notoriously known to be haunted, or infamously, if I should say. And I go, and you start to realize pretty quickly that the owners of some of these buildings not only fabricate some of the stories, they fabricate some of the history. And I've even been in locations where some of the owners go as far as to try and conjure or try and manifest manifestations of their own in the building. So I won't say names. I won't go too far into it. Last time I did, there was a lot of controversy, so I'll try and stay away from that. But yeah, we've been locations before where myself and Mustafa Galilari, who is my investigating partner on Ghost Hunters, have found some very shady things and have found some very, unethical things, is what I would say. So yeah, there's been multiple locations I've been to where there's been some very unethical things going on, and throughout the country, these places are widely known to be haunted. But I'd have to say that we didn't find anything. Doesn't mean it's not. Again, it's kind of a right place at the right time situation. But like my scientific consultant, Dr. Clore, always tells me, if this phenomena is real and it is taking place, we should be able to record it with a scientific instrument. So.
So how do you guys decide on, well, for the show Ghost Hunters, how do you guys decide on the location that you're going to go to?
Well, we're very lucky to have not only A&E as well as Pilgrim Films, who produces the show. They have an extreme vetting process. I mean, it is just crazy what they do to get us into a location. A lot of people reach out to us. I think probably 99% of them reach out wanting us to come out there and check it out for various reasons. Sometimes a location may want to be more well known. Sometimes people are genuinely looking for answers. Sometimes people are genuinely afraid of the phenomena that's taking place. So, but luckily with A&E as well as Pilgrim, they have such a great vetting process that they send us to locations that are very interesting, and some of which have been very active. So it's been great.
Mhm.
Since like Ghost Hunters is a show and it's like entertainment, and is there, have you ever like went back and then watched your own the show again and been like, maybe this might have been a little too exaggerated, or or are they really all just, I guess, what you actually see?
Well, I can only speak for myself and the way I conduct my research and what I do out in the field. I've been lucky to have filmmaking experience and also working behind the camera for many years. So I know that if I give them something, that's the only thing they're going to get. You know what I mean? So I go out there, I conduct myself the way I always have in 17 years of research, and follow my methodology, follow my protocols, and follow my standards and ethics, and there it is. They can handle that however they want. So I can only speak for myself, but there's never really been a moment on the show that I've seen myself on that made me go, "Oh man, I wish that was different," because I just conducted myself the way I always do, and luckily it plays that way. So I've been very lucky in that regard.
Have you ever watched the footage back and been like, oh, how did I not notice this thing? Like that was, like there was something happened there
Right.
that no one noticed, kind of thing.
Not really, not with ghost hunters, because we're so methodical
Mhm.
with our with our research. Not only
Right.
from the pre-planning of the pre-research, but actually going out in the field and then the analysis. The analysis is such a huge part of research, as we all know, for anyone that is out there actually trying to collect data.
Mhm.
But it's very much a huge process of the show that you don't really see in the show. Is just the hours and hours and hours of analysis that we do. And
Mhm.
luckily we have some really great people on the team that take it very seriously and are very methodical in the way they go through the analysis and really go through
Mhm.
all the recordings. So I've yet to see something that was different after the analysis. So we're very methodical in that regard, and we
Mhm.
really take it very seriously. So
That's good.
So what was the name of the other organization you're part of that you work with?
yeah, I founded APRA, American Paranormal Research Association, in 2006, and we've been doing it for a number of years now, and we've investigated well over almost 300 locations now, which is really amazing. And I was very lucky early on to get some very brilliant people from other technical industries that actually help us in the analysis and really help us with data. So APRA has been something I've been doing for a long time. I founded it in 2006, and we continue to research to this day.
And for that, you're doing your own paranormal documentaries on YouTube for, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that we've been doing, myself and Mustafa Gadalari, which is interesting, is that we've been going back and looking at case logs of APRA and actually
Mhm.
going through and breaking that down from a fresh perspective, right? So we talk about the standards, the ethics, the protocol, and the methodology that we use to capture some of the data that we do not have explanation for. And so it's pretty cool
Mhm.
to have that callback where you're looking at footage sometimes from 2006, 2009, and having these amazing pieces of data we collected, and to show the way we went about collecting that data and how that works. So we have a few of those out on YouTube right now, which is really interesting. It's called Formula of a Haunting. Old South Pittsburgh Hospital is one of the episodes. We have Andres Pico Adobe, and we also have the Velisca Axberger House. And those are all very interesting locations. And again, out of 300 places that we've been, we probably have maybe 10 to 12 locations that we've captured data we can't explain. And it's been a lot of fun to go back with Mustafa and really go through that footage again to see what the standards and the ethics and the protocol was to really capture these really amazing pieces of data in those moments. So it's cool to go back with a fresh pair of eyes. It's a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have another question. It's kind of a long one. So I know that your focus is on pure scientific research. However, some of the tools that paranormal investigators use today were those that were featured on Ghost Hunters and other shows. How do you recommend that others move away from some of the more sensationalized tools to those that are more scientific in nature?
Oh, absolutely. Well, lucky enough in the reboot of Ghost Hunters on A&E, we never used a piece of what we call garage tech or a piece of data, or excuse me, a piece of equipment that can't be analyzed by a third party. And that's where I would, that's what I would suggest and recommend, is that we use pieces of equipment that can have analysis from a third party. You can't go to an audio engineer and show a spirit box clip because they're going to tell you it's completely contaminated because it's all radio frequencies. So if you're using a very high quality audio recorder that has a high bit rate and you take that to an audio engineer, you can break that down through spectrum analysis and really see, is it a stray radio frequency? Is it a cell phone frequency? Is it some other kind of frequency that's contaminating your recording? So I would suggest staying away from garage tech and tools built specifically for paranormal research, and to use devices that can be analyzed by a third party expert. That's what I would suggest in order to move away from the sensationalism and some of those sensationalized tools. But again, with A&E's Ghost Hunters, the reboot, we never once used a device that was built specifically for paranormal research. So it's been pretty cool.
It's pretty cool to see some of the stuff that I was talking about with the club, and then he's saying very similar stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And what was cool with Ghost Hunters, again, like I was very lucky to bring my protocol and my methodology from APRA into Ghost Hunters, because again, it was all new team. It wasn't TAPS. You had Grant Wilson that was there, but it was a whole new organization at that point. I was very lucky that A&E and Pilgrim Films allowed me and picked me to go on the show because of my work with APRA, and to say this is the type of research we're looking for, because they wanted that scientific approach. They wanted to be able to say, hey, look, we are trying to do things scientifically and from a logical point of view, instead of running into a location and using SLS cameras, spirit boxes, obelisks that you can go in for 2 hours and walk out with a 45-minute TV show because you know that you're going to get false positives all day and you can just spin a narrative out of it.
I guess with all your research that you've done, could you say at this point for yourself that there are some questions that you've answered and you could say from a scientific standpoint that like what a ghost is or what something is?
I can say that we did have some breakthroughs with the EMCCD camera, the photon events that we were talking about. And once we started to collect some of these images with this camera, I started setting a data logger in front of it. And I wanted to see what the environmental conditions were at the exact moments during these photon events, which is very strange. And one thing we have noticed is that anytime we have some of these unexplained photon events, there are drastic pressure changes, drastic. And what's interesting about that is if you go into quantum physics and you talk about black hole theory and black holes, photon events and pressure changes are a huge part of that, a huge part of the observation into that type of research. And so we're starting to see a correlation there, right? Can we definitively say that these are entities or ghosts or something that we can't explain, or a deceased person? We can't at this moment, but we can say that we are seeing some very interesting correlations between photon events taking place in said haunted locations and drastic pressure changes. So those things seem to go hand in hand, and what that means right now, we don't know, but we have to collect more data, and maybe there is a natural explanation that we don't know of. It's very possible, but as of right now, we're not quite sure what's going on. But I think that that correlation between pressure and photon events is something that needs to be looked at, very carefully in this field, and hopefully we can take that and really build upon it.
I'm pretty sure you already did it.
Yeah, I know.
But seeing you've mentioned Mustafa a few times, like outside of doing the TV work, and I don't want to get like in a drama or anything, but how often, like, do you still investigate off that show with the other cast members also?
Oh, I do. Yeah, and Mustafa and I actually work very closely together. We have a book coming out that's going to be published through Llewellyn Worldwide, which is one of my favorite publishers. They've been publishing books for over 118 years. And we have a book that's going to be coming out here next year, early next year. Can't give the exact date yet or the title. We'll be announcing that soon. But him and I work very closely. And him and I actually have a new project that's going to be coming out in 2022 as well, which I think is going to be very exciting to a lot of people in paranormal research. Because not only does it kind of go hand in hand with our book and a very different side of research, something that really hasn't been done in the field yet, but him and I work very closely. Same with Daryl. Daryl Marston's another guy I work with very closely. Kristen Lumen and I actually just did a 3-day live stream event at the LA Police Museum with the Dark Zone, which was a very cool investigation. So yeah, no, they're great people. They're very nice, genuine people that we talk to, but Mustafa and I work very closely. Him and I, from the moment we met, hit it off, and we work and gel so well together because we have our different ideas, but we always have a common middle ground, and it really, complements, each other, and it really helps with pushing research forward for sure.
That's good.
Is there a place that you haven't investigated yet, or is there like wait, sorry, my brain's not working. Is there a place that if you had the chance to investigate, like what would be your dream place to investigate that you haven't already?
I'd probably have to say the Tower of London would be epic. Epic. I mean, this place has so much history, so many layers of history. I mean, if you were to pick a location that was kind of built to be a haunted place, I think the Tower of London has that history and has these not only amazing sightings and eyewitness testimony for a number of years, but it has what Mustafa and I always refer to as the formula of a haunting. It has that the makings of a haunted place, and that's something him and I talk about a lot, and we will be talking a lot about in the book. But it has that formula to it, and I think that Tower of London would be probably number one on my list for sure.
So with formula of haunting, have you ever come across like just a place that hasn't been investigated before, isn't like a very popular place, and then found a lot of evidence there?
Yeah, that would have to be the McConaughey estate, which I mentioned earlier. We picked this location solely based off of its history, not based off of really eyewitness testimony. It was not a known location. No one had ever investigated it prior. But over the years of all this research that I've been conducting and really compiling these certain locations that have a certain makeup, certain environmental conditions, certain history, we kind of picked that one and we showed up, and it's been almost 10 years now we've been investigating that location. Not only do we have compelling visual data, but compelling audible data as well, and environmental data also. We've actually run infrasound experiments in there with Dr. Harry Clore to see if it was possible that the traffic from the street was causing people to have these experiences, to see if that there was a temporal lobe activity involved in it. And the moment you bring in a world-renowned scientist into a location like that, you run an experiment like that, he walks out and goes, I have no idea what the hell's going on. Those are always the exciting moments. And yeah, so definitely the McConaughey estate. And again, it all goes back to what we call the formula of a haunting. I think that there are certain locations that not only have a certain makeup of the building, the materials used to build that location, the history associated with it, but there's and the environmental conditions as well. I think all those things come together, and sometimes it just has that perfect formula.
Okay, so we have another question from the audience. So does getting evidence or something unexplained make you believe more or make you more skeptical?
I call myself a natural skeptic. I think the moment I start to lean too heavily one way or another, I think I start to become biased in that point of view. And I think that can be dangerous for research. I think that it's always best to go in with an open mind, but to stay logical and grounded, right? So it's always best to go into a location not really leaning too much one way or another. But I feel like as time goes on, there's always more questions than answers, which is always kind of the fun part, right? I guess that's what keeps everyone researching. Because if we had all the answers, I don't think it would be quite as fun anymore, right? So, but I try to stay as middle grounded as possible, just open-minded yet skeptical in the sense of let the devices collect the data, analyze the data, and let the data speak for itself.
Yeah. Has there ever been anything that happened that like while you were on an investigation, maybe for ghost hunters or maybe just by yourself? Well, yeah, or whenever you had an investigation, had anything happened that like scared you or was like, what just happened? I can't believe that happened kind of thing?
I've never been scared per se, but I've had moments that really, it makes you start to question things to such an extent. It does make you a little uneasy, right? You start to really try and break it down from a logical or a natural explanation. And when you don't have those answers instantaneously in that moment, it can be a bit uneasy, but I've never really been frightened or scared. I've never ran out of the building, never ran from something. I think the moment we start to run away from it is the day we should probably hang it up, because that's what we're there for, right? We're wanting that experience, wanting to collect that information, that data. And if it happens, you sure as hell better stick around for it.
Right.
I don't know. I'm trying to formulate.
I know, yeah, too.
Okay, one.
Josh, do you have any questions? No.
All my questions have been answered.
I
I don't know what else to ask
we
because
still
it's
got
like,
a half hour, guys.
I want to kind of hear what your opinion about the community of the paranormal is, because, like,
Could you say that one more time? I'm sorry.
I want to know what, like, your opinion about the community that we have for the paranormal is, because from, like, where we are, it's a very good community, but I'm not sure if, like, seeing you're more popular, if you still get to have that positive community.
No, there's a
I hope
plus.
I asked right.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah, for sure. There's some pluses and there's some negatives, obviously, in the field. I've been doing this again for 17 years. I've been around for a good amount of time. I mean, it's not too long, but I mean, it's a good enough amount of time to really get a taste of the community in the paranormal field. I do think that there's a really negative thing going on when it comes to territory and staking claims, and really people going to a location saying that's a place that they can only go to and all the places they can only research. I also think it can be really difficult sometimes to spit the scientific truth to the community. I think sometimes a lot of people take this almost as a religion, to where it's a form of spirituality, which is nothing wrong with that in any way, shape, or form. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But when you start to really break things down from a data perspective and a scientific perspective, it can really rattle some cages and really upset people sometimes. And I'm outspoken when it comes to certain technology out there, certain investigation techniques. We're all entitled to our own opinion. It's not to say someone's right or wrong, but from what I like to do and the way I conduct my research, I'm always vocal about things I see that I can say are not truthful or sensationalized. And when I do that, it can get really ugly sometimes. And I'm not doing it to be popular. I'm not doing it to make a name for myself. I'm doing this for my own personal curiosity. I've been lucky to get to the point where I am now and have, some great resources with A&E and Ghost Hunters and Science Channel and Travel Channel, all these different, amazing, networks I've worked with that have given me more resources to go out there and do this. But I'll always speak the truth. I'll always say what I believe, and I'll always call out things that I think are shady or just plain out sensationalized. And I think it can be really positive sometimes, and sometimes it can be really negative.
Yeah, for sure. So we have two more questions. Well, we'll do this question first. Okay, so do you think that there will come a time in our lifetime where we will have a definite answer?
I think that we're getting close to understanding some of the mechanics associated with what we believe to be ghostly phenomena. or hauntings. And it may come down to a fact that there's a pure natural explanation, which would be very interesting within itself. But I think that we're getting closer. And I think that as technology gets better, which I mean, it's growing at such a rapid rate these days, it's unbelievable. And when you start to get scientists, medical doctors, engineers, people that are from these, technical industries involved in our space and in our research, and when we're, comfortable and opening ourselves up to that scrutiny, I think that we're going to get a lot more answers. I think that we're going to get closer and closer each day. But I think it's all about a majority of the community really opening themselves up to that scrutiny. I know it can be tough sometimes because you have a belief system you want to believe, or there's a way, you conduct yourself. But the moment you open yourselves up to these people that really have answers and know what is natural phenomena, what's not, that's, going to take a step closer for sure.
Right.
Isn't there another question?
Yeah, there is. I just didn't know if you guys wanted to expand on that. Okay. And then another one. What would you do if you were not a paranormal investigator?
Doing what I always do, making films. I'm a filmmaker, man. That's what I do. It's what I love. I do documentary films. I work in television, and I love being behind the camera. I love writing. I love being creative. It's a lot of fun. Something I've been very lucky to do professionally for many years. And I released a documentary right before actually I went on the road with ghost hunters called Cemetery Park. That was a true crime film that actually got into the Santa Barbara International Film Festival, which is one of the best film festivals in the country. And it's actually about the city of Ventura, California, illegally demolishing a pioneer cemetery with over 3,000 graves there. And there was a huge cover up and all kinds of crazy stuff. And it's one of the best things to do as a documentary filmmaker is you feel like an investigative journalist, right? It's very similar to paranormal research. You can't have a bias. You have to go in there and find the information and just let that information play out the way it really did. And that was a lot of fun making that film by digging up all these documents, talking to all these people over a span of years, and really showing this amazing story about something that was a huge illegality in Ventura, California. So filmmaking is what I love to do.
Do you think there's like at a point of researching, there's like, or just just something that you shouldn't really mess with your investigations? Like, I guess I don't know exactly how to phrase this question, but I guess like at a point, like even I don't know what I'm saying anymore.
No, I understand. Like I would say that I think that there is a red line where when it comes to cultural belief, right? And I think sometimes you see paranormal investigators or people that are generally curious or have a curiosity start to kind of push the boundaries of certain people's cultural beliefs. And I think that can be a dangerous kind of thing, not only because of a respect level, right? And really respecting these people's cultural beliefs, but to go out there and really kind of mess with things you don't really quite know, So I think that would be what I would say. But again, if you're willing to go out there and try and do these things, make sure that that culture and those people that conduct themselves or whatever, their belief system is inviting you to join in on that and be part of it. But I think it can always be dangerous when you go and try and mimic certain cultural beliefs, because I think there's a major respect level there. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's
What do you think of like YouTube paranormal investigators? Like, I don't know if you know them, but oh my gosh, just like the vlogging type that don't have the equipment and stuff.
Yeah, no, I think it's
more for hype.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting to see. I think a lot of times you see television mimicked in that way. And, again, every show has a different way they do things. Well, not really. I mean, there's not a majority of the shows you see nowadays are just the same damn thing with a different name. It's just kind of ridiculous at this point. But I think it can be a negative thing to the field when you go out and you mimic some of these investigation techniques you see on certain shows that are clearly designed for sensationalism, that are clearly designed to go in there and produce a 42-minute TV show where you use very specific equipment, use very specific techniques that you know are going to give you results, which are always false positives, but you can spin a narrative out of it. I think that could be a negative sometimes. But again, to each their own. Everyone does it their own way. But I think that the only way forward for not only this field to be taken seriously, but for us to really have some kind of answers is to really do it from a scientific perspective and really not only open ourselves up to that third-party scrutiny, but really remain logical and grounded. And I would hope to see that more often, but it doesn't happen as often as I think it should. But I think as we continue, as the technology and our thoughts and our minds expand, I hope that people become more logical.
What is what's your favorite paranormal movie? Like, do you have a favorite paranormal movie? And like, do you think like any of them comes close to like the real deal, or like the real thing?
Yeah, I do. It's definitely not the Conjuring films. I'll say that first. But I will say that I think that the George C. Scott version of The Changeling is amazing. And they actually, in that film, I think it's in the early 80s, they made it. It's about a composer, a music composer, who his wife and his daughter die, unfortunately, and he moves to be a professor of music at a college, and he moves into this big old spooky house and starts to have all these experiences. And they actually show the early days of electronic voice phenomena, tape to tape recorders, really cool stuff. You'd have to see that. It's a really great film. And I'd also say another one would have to be a movie called Session 9. There's no paranormal investigation in the film per se, but I think the psychology behind it, and it's about this team of people that are going in to remove asbestos from an abandoned mental hospital, which was filmed in a real abandoned mental hospital, the former Danvers State University, or Danvers State Mental Hospital, excuse me. And they go in, they start to have all these experiences, and I think that was a really cool way to show how a building can kind of influence people sometimes. So I'd have to say The Changeling with George C. Scott and Session 9 are two amazing films.
I guess besides paranormal stuff, is there any like other type of, what do you call them? Other things that you would say that you could probably see or believe in, or would want to like investigate, like cryptids, or like aliens, or Sasquatch or Nessie?
Sure. Yeah, I've always found an interest in UFOs and aliens and things like that. It's never really been a point of research for me, but I've always found interdimensional phenomena something that's really interesting. Things like transversality and the idea of multiple places intersecting and there being multiple dimensions interacting with each other, which could also go into the haunting aspect as well, which is very interesting. So, I have to say the interdimensional phenomena stuff is really always fascinated me. It's really not something I've gone into on the alien side per se, but it's definitely a point of interest from the haunting side, which is always fun. So interdimensional phenomena, I think, is kind of cool.
Interesting. That's a lot of information. A lot. Jeez. It's been a good I can't tell time, but it's been a good
44 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody dropped another question.
Oh.
No, that was just my mom told me right now.
It's been fun.
Write down the movies.
Any other questions, I guess?
I'm trying to think. Do you have any? No.
So do you have like a location that you would just say that you spend enough time there that it's kind of like your go-to place or your home location to test out stuff and such?
Yeah, well, it's funny enough, I actually lived in a haunted hotel for almost 3 years I did that purposely. It wasn't like I just moved there and, oh, it's haunted. I actually put myself in the environment for 3 years because I wanted to see what it was like to live in a known haunted place. And I was very lucky. One of my best friends, JJ Seacott, and his wife Monica ran the location, and they gave me a call one day and said, hey, the former caretaker's apartment upstairs is available. Would you like to move in? I was like, yeah, absolutely. So I did it, and I actually researched the location and lived there and researched the location for 3 years. That's the Glen Tavern in Santa Paula, California. And they had a hard time renting out that unit because the former caretaker actually hung himself a couple years prior in the closet. And so I moved in, and not only was I able to investigate every single room of that place, but I was in that location by myself many nights. I mean, no one else in a 40-room hotel by myself. And that was a really interesting location. And I actually still live about 15 miles from that place, which is really cool. But I think that was really an interesting, part of, coming into my own as a researcher and as an investigator was really, engulfing myself and putting myself in a situation that I think a lot of people wouldn't, because some people think it's going a bit too far, but I learned a lot, man. And that's when I really started to get some of the theories with environmental data and actually being at a location consistently for a number of years and observing that. So it was really cool living at the Glen Tavern, that's for sure.
That's so cool.
There's no way that you didn't experience one night where you're like, I can't sleep tonight. If that I just 3 years and nothing.
There were a few times.
Was there like one night where you were like, oh, there's someone out my door and I don't want to check?
Well, there's an interesting phenomena at the Glen Tavern with children, ghosts, entities, whatever you want to call them. And I would wake up sometimes in my apartment. I'd hear them in the next room, kind of, running around. I'd hear giggling. Like they seemed to be very aware of me and my presence and being there. And it seemed intelligent. But again, you never know, man. I always lean on the side of maybe, I was half asleep. Maybe I wasn't imagining it. Maybe it was something I can explain logically. But yeah, no, I woke up a couple times to people standing over me in certain rooms there. But again, I always go into that natural, logical explanation. I always start, maybe it was a form of sleep paralysis. Maybe it was something like a waking dream or something like that. So it was tough, but I never was so frightened or freaked out that I didn't stay there. I really had nowhere else to go because I lived there, so I had no options. But it was a really great experience. I could say that for sure.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Would you at least say you've had a roommate as a ghost as your roommate?
A ghost roommate.
A ghost roommate.
Basically, yeah. No, it was interesting. I mean, especially hearing those kids, and it was so often. I mean, at least once or twice a week, I would hear them all throughout the building or in my unit, which was interesting. But that seemed to be the most of the phenomena that was taking place there, which is funny because a lot of people go to this location because they believe that there was a former brothel and a speakeasy during the Prohibition on the 3rd floor, which none of that is true in any way, shape, or form. It is complete urban legend, complete fabrication. For some reason, people for so many years have been going there and believing this to such an extent that it almost seems like there's this weird, like, thought form manifestation taking place at this location, because people have gone, for over 20, 30 years believing these stories, and it almost seems to take place in some way. Like, there was a night I woke up, I was sleeping on the 3rd floor in one of the rooms. I think it was 207, I think it was the room number. And I heard a knock at the door with what sounded like a key, which they don't use keys there anymore. It's all like the modern card system for hotels. And I opened the door, and as soon as I opened the door, I heard 1920s big band music playing in the hallway, which literally makes no sense because I was working overnight there, and I don't know why it was happening. And it almost seems like people have gone there for so many years believing these stories that in some way it's almost manifesting itself. So I always thought that was an interesting phenomena that should be looked into a bit further.
Someone asked, did you ever go back to reinvestigate?
Absolutely, always, constantly. That's another location that's we've observed for many years, and we continue to this day. Every once in a while we go in certain times of the year just the times of the year that we've seen an increase in activity in years prior, just to see if we can collect more data. That's something we've always done. But yeah, we love observing locations for an extended period of time. It's not about how many locations we can investigate. It's about how much data we can collect in known locations, locations that we have previous data, and we want to build upon that.
Right.
Did you ever learn, you said with the children in the hallway, did you ever learn who the children were? And like,
Never.
did you, never?
Unfortunately, no. Never got a name. Never got a name. There's no death records associated with children. But again, you never know. You know, the early 1900s was a very strange time, and there could be deaths that, you know, there's no documentation associated with it. But yeah, no, we never could find factual documentation associated with the death of children. There's yet again another story at the Glen Taverns. They said that part of it was used as a tuberculosis hospital, which is not true. Yet again, another urban legend that's kind of spawned a lot of stories. But I'll tell you right now, not only have I recorded their voices and had it, you know, analyzed through spectrum analysis, we can't explain it, but I've heard them many times, and who they are, why they're there, I have no clue. So that's another reason why we keep going back. So, you know, it's something that's always been interesting. Funny enough, there was a story about an elderly couple that was staying in one of the rooms on the second floor. And it was during a wedding party, because a lot of weddings are held at the Glen Tavern. It's a beautiful location. A lot of receptions are held there. And a elderly couple came down to the front desk and complained because they said a little girl ran in their room and hid under the bed, and they can't get her to come out. And the manager went up. There was no one under the bed, and there was no children staying at the hotel. So just little things like that. I mean, people that don't go there to investigate it, that aren't expecting to stay in a place that has activity. So I mean, just so many years of those types of stories is, you know, kind of an interesting point of that place.
Since you lived there for 3 years, do you think like those spirits like start to recognize you, or like?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I especially the two kids that we would run into all the time. You would start to see things that it made research a little easier, if that makes sense. Certain devices we would use, for instance, motion detectors, that we would ask, can you walk in front of it? You know, I hate to use this word, but it's almost like we trained them to utilize the technology. I hate to use that word. I don't think it's, ethical, but they started to know how to use the equipment, and it on command. We would have actual conversations through a motion detector, which is really interesting. Just very simple things like that, So we did start to notice a familiarity, that's for sure.
That's cool. I think we have time for one more question. You want to do that?
I guess speaking about like training, like you said, do you think that's something you would try and do for like, I guess do it over and over again until like you could get to a really trusting state with, I guess, the spirit, and it becomes like really like a regular conversation?
That would
do you
be
think
ideal.
That's something?
That would be ideal. I think that's something that, again, going back and talking about how you would investigate a location for an extended period of time for a number of years, you have to build that familiarity, right? That rapport and trust, even at that point, to hopefully get into a situation where you think you're actually dealing with a deceased person that retained consciousness of some kind. That would be interesting in itself. And to be able to have that familiarity and really try and teach them how to use the technology and to set it off and to communicate with it, that would be amazing. I think that the scientific community would take that very seriously as well. I think that's something they would want to see, almost in as controlled of environment as possible, being able to have repeatable activity or repeatable data. That's what we're looking for. So that would be ideal. That's hopefully one something we could do one day. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Nice.
We good? We'll wrap it up?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Brandon, for talking with us about all your experiences, and it's been a good time.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate it, man. It was awesome. Great speaking to you guys.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us.
Yes. Thank you for joining us.
And
awesome, guys.
Good luck on your, I guess, future research.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. And again, thanks for having me on.
I don't need it, but
Yeah, no problem.
I mean,
have a good night, guys.
You too.
Night.
Have a good night. Bye.